When you break the traditional setup of a roguelike and separate the biomes into their own separate levels, you get Saros. Given that this developer's last game Returnal was so difficult, this may seem like an attempt to become more accessible to a wider pool of players. Is this decision one that dilutes the fun loop so many people swarm to roguelikes for, or ultimately is gameplay king? What's up? How's it going, people? Welcome to Casual Gamer Reviews. If you enjoy this content, please leave a like, subscribe and share with your friends. If you don't like it, then leave a thumbs down and let me know how I can be better for you. Saros took me 16.5 hours to roll credits, but I have put in several more for the post-game content. Saros' gameplay is the most fun I've had this year with a video game. That's really saying something considering the releases we've had this year so far. It's a fast-paced, high-octane third-person shooter where everything is performed at breakneck speed. The thing that I can say to really make you understand this is that the standard moving speed of Arjun Devraj, the protagonist played by the illustrious Rahul Kohli, is a full-on sprint. To be clear, that's the starting speed. You can go a lot faster. Saros operates like a bullet storm game, or bullet ballet as developers like to say. Hordes of enemies will be spewing projectiles in every direction and you'll be zipping in and out between them. Arjun has a sprint, a dash, a shield, an enormous jump, a parry and other useful traversal tools that you unlock with progression like a grapple and a bounce pad. All of these complement each other to ensure that you are pinging all over the screen at high speed to keep up with the never-ending threats while spraying your gun from the hip. I cannot stress enough how fun it is and how good it feels to control. The different projectiles do different things. The blue ones can be absorbed by your shield or dashed through. If they are absorbed, they refill your power bar, so it's always worth doing. The yellow ones can only be dashed through unless you get a shield upgrade, and the red ones, which deal the most damage, can only be parried. Saros isn't a turn your mind off kind of game, but it's not difficult to understand, so you will feel locked in at the same time as feeling like a god. On the surface level, Saros is a roguelike through and through. Die and you have to start the level again. However, this game has a lot of permanent progression boosters that always mean you'll come back stronger, as the tagline goes. Permanent progression boosters are not new for roguelikes, especially modern ones like Hades, but the amount of them and how frequently you can unlock them is where Saros differentiates itself. Weapons, abilities, which are called power weapons in this game, situational buffs, and upgrade currency are all found as you make your way through a run. There are several containers to break that supply these, as well as being dropped by enemies. There are no loadouts, which is nice to be able to cycle through weapons. I found this at its most attractive when it came to bosses, as some of them needed a certain approach that maybe I didn't find useful against the general enemies out in the wider level. There is a good variety of weapons, and you can choose to have ones which are auto hit or ones that are manual aim. Given the speed of this game, I would always opt for auto hit, but there are some instances where a manual aim would be better, as you could specifically target weak points on elite enemies. Even though all these things can only be picked up on a run like I said, the permanent progression boosters give them a foot up due to increasing a base level. First off, there is proficiency, which determines the base level of your weapons. Each weapon you find out on your run will have a level, and that level cannot be lower than your proficiency. Proficiency increases naturally as a run progresses by defeating enemies and collecting Lucenite, this game's currency, but the base level can be permanently increased at the upgrade station in between runs. Weapons of a higher level have more potential due to having more traits and increased stat caps. For example, a weapon with higher proficiency can have up to 5 special traits like penetrating rounds or increased damage after quick reload, to name a couple, whereas on lower proficiency these would have 0 or 1. With the stat cap increases, the weapon level won't directly affect damage output, but will have a higher cap for it to be affected by your other attributes. There are 3 other attributes in Saros: resilience, command, and drive. Resilience relates directly to your integrity, which is the title this game gives your health bar. Increasing resilience will not only increase your health, but also generally increase your defense against incoming damage. Command is tied to your power level. Increasing your command means more power, which means stronger power weapons. This is essential for elite enemies and bosses. Lastly, drive affects the strength of Lucenite. Increasing this attribute means your proficiency will level quicker during your run, also essential when getting into the late game as it's your pathway to stronger weapons. All of these attributes can be increased through finding artifacts or enhancers during a run, but also their base levels can be increased permanently at the upgrade station in between runs. These permanent upgrades are not few and far between and definitely go a long way to making you feel stronger. This is not a bad thing as I feared it would be before this game's release, however, and there is still a steep challenge level here. It is easier and there will be fewer roadblocks. Most bosses took me less than 3 tries for example, but Saros balances this with more biomes and Carcosan modifiers. The 8 biomes of Saros keep the gameplay fun and well paced, because although you will be spending less time in each area, there always seems to be a brand new one to explore right after it. I don't know if I liked it better than running the same 3 or 4 biomes over and over again, scraping a little bit further each time, but I definitely didn't think it was worse. I guess in summary, it had the same effect on me, which is great because I love roguelikes. Each biome also has sprawling paths, including secret areas to discover. Some of these can only be accessed through abilities you earn much later in the game, so they have their replayability set in a more Metroidvania style rather than the traditional roguelike. The Carcosan modifiers are there if you do want that higher challenge. These provide enhancements or difficulties to your run depending on what you seek. They operate on a balanced scale, so you can't just make things super easy. For every ease that tilts the scale, you must bear a strife to balance it out. It's an interesting system that I've not seen before and it's implemented really well. You really have to think about what you can make do without and what you are willing to sacrifice for the things you want. The other layer of difficulty is something called the Eclipse. This is a stationary beacon that pops up around the biome and if used will transform the world and the enemies inside it. There are more environmental hazards and the enemies become more difficult. Most biomes require you to activate the Eclipse at least once to get to the boss, so it didn't really feel special, although there usually is one towards the start of the level 2 if you wanted that difficulty from the offset. I wish you weren't forced to use it in every biome, as it then just becomes part of the gameplay loop as opposed to the challenge mode I feel like it should be. The final thing I will discuss in regard to the gameplay is the bosses. These are huge monstrosities that have multiple stages and the fights take place in the most epic arenas. The difficulty felt pretty consistent throughout and I never felt overpowered. I died as many times to the first boss as I did to the final one. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't think they were too difficult, but you can make it more difficult for yourself by using the Carcosan modifiers. The boss fights are where the gameplay peaks though, and the fast-paced adrenaline junkie action that gets your heart racing is on full display. I felt out of breath after defeating these bosses, but boy did I feel amazing. Great job on these boss designs, Housemarque. Where I think I'm the lowest on Saros is with the visuals. Now, there's a huge but here because I still think at times the visuals are incredible, but they aren't consistent. The characters look really good, especially the lead played by Rahul. It's really a technical showcase for how realistic we can make video game characters look with the current tech. Similarly, the enemies and bosses look fantastic. There are a couple of bosses towards the end that are truly stunning. The developers describe the aesthetic as a fusion of neoclassicism and Italian futurism mixed with alien architecture. This is more apparent for me in the haunting boss designs that are draped in gold and bathed in the yellow sun. With environments, however, is where I was less impressed. You get a lot of the visual spectacle that I just described in the later biomes, especially the last 2, but the earlier ones can feel quite bland. In fact, I'd say the first 4 biomes are relatively uninspired when compared to the rest. It's a little disappointing to me that the visuals could be so strong in a lot of areas, but significantly weaker in others. From a performance standpoint, Saros is immaculate. In fact, it felt so smooth it took me a few minutes to adjust coming off the back of other titles. It runs at a high frame rate, which really is essential given the bullet hell madness you have to go through. Saros has an extremely strong voice cast. Of course, Arjun is not just the model of Rahul Kohli, but voiced by him too to an excellent standard. Shanuri Ramanathan as Nitya is another standout and really gives rise to the ethereal illusionist approach of the planet Carcosa. The other actors mostly come through in the form of audio logs, but there are some big names here like Adrian Ray, who played Hazel in South of Midnight, Jane Perry, who is a voice acting veteran and voiced Housemarque's last protagonist in Returnal, Game Award winning Neil Newbon from Baldur's Gate 3, Samantha Bart also from Baldur's Gate 3, Ben Prendergast, Tracy Wiles, I could go on. The story itself I'll go into in a minute, but from a voice perspective I was really impressed by the quality. The composer is Sam Slater, who also composed the game Battlefield 2042, but in the wider world helped produce the score on prestigious media such as Joker and Chernobyl. The Joker score is where he earned a Grammy. What Sam has created for Saros is intense and brutal. It's hammering bass mixed with a mechanical sound that blends well with the idea of alien architecture and technology. It's not a soundtrack I'd listen to on its own, but it works well with the bullet ballet of the gameplay. Your screen is being assaulted with projectiles, and your ears are being assaulted by the soundtrack. In the previews and lead up to the game, Housemarque were expressing an emphasis on the story. The setup is that Arjun Devraj is part of Expedition Team Echelon 4. There were 3 expedition teams that have been sent before them by the Soltari Corporation to mine this planet's rare resource and set up a potential colony. All 3 of those teams have gone dark, and so those of Echelon 4 have been sent to continue the mission whilst also searching for members of the 3 previous ones. Arjun battles with his own personal turmoils along the journey, as well as the conflicts he has with his own team. The planet of Carcosa is its own character as well, as it centers heavily around all narrative aspects. Ultimately, I just didn't find it that interesting. There are plenty of audio logs and text files scattered about, but they all sort of blended into one at some point, and I stopped reading them because it didn't capture my attention. I know a game like this isn't about the story, and it only really exists as a vehicle for your endpoint, but I was completely uninterested in what was there. There is a moment in the story where there is supposed to be a big revelation for the player as some pieces start to click together, but it just missed the mark for me. In the end game, the story opens up again, and I did find that bit more engaging, so I do feel more positive towards it in that aspect. In terms of side content, Saros has something called Nightmare Gates, which are additional challenge rooms on most levels. Some of these were really tough, particularly if you had added on some Carcosan modifiers. Outside of this, there is all the endgame content, which adds bosses and additional story content. To be honest, the whole game is designed to be played as many times as you want. That's basically the point of roguelikes. There is a lot of side paths with audio and text logs and elite enemies across the biomes. There are the many Carcosan modifiers to activate to give you a different experience, and the skill tree had loads of nodes left for me to unlock when I rolled credits for the first time, so you will feel like you are progressing and getting stronger for many hours after the story is completed. I for one have kept jumping back in for an hour or so here and there because I love the feel of the gameplay. This is a game I want to platinum simply because it's so fun. The more you use your weapons and power weapons, the more you unlock about them in the databank, which provides some additional information about the planet too, so there are little tidbits always unlocking on the side. Housemarque has produced another high quality roguelike that feels incredible to play. There is a lot of difficulty modifiers as well as skill unlocks on the upgrade tree to keep the gameplay fresh for many hours. I don't think I've ever experienced a title on console that runs so smooth. The voice acting is immersive due to its high quality, and I enjoyed the challenge of the Nightmare Gates and endgame. Visually, the output is a bit more conflicting, as at times the direction is sensational and others a little dull. The story didn't captivate me as much as I hoped given the focus on it, but ultimately it's hard to criticize this game too much given that I'm struggling to put it down. This is definitely going to be one I keep revisiting in the years to come. Saros gets a casual gamer score of 8.5 out of 10. Check my channel for breakdowns of all the major summer showcase events. If you prefer my reviews, then check out my recent ones for Pragmata and Aphelion. Keep an eye out next week for my July release calendar to plan your way through the summer months. If you enjoy this content, please leave a like, subscribe and share with your friends. If you don't like it, then leave a thumbs down and I'll try to be better next time. Let me know if you'll be picking up Saros in the comments below, and for everything else, casual gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.